I need you to look at these shoes. They were pulled from a shallow creek in rural Illinois, found just a few feet away from the body of a 3-year-old girl who was floating face down in the water. On the tongue of each shoe, someone had written a name: E.B. These were Department of Corrections issued sneakers. They were collected by investigators on the same day that little girl's body was recovered. They were logged into evidence, and then they were set aside, because investigators had already decided who killed Riley Fox. Her father. This is a story about a man who loved his daughter more than anything on this earth. A man who would have traded his life for hers without a second thought, and a system that looked at that love and called it guilt. I think about what it means to be a parent, not the version we perform on social media or at school pickup, the real thing where you are up till 3 a.m, the one where you're running on empty and your kid calls your name and somehow you get back up. That's who Kevin Fox was. And what Kevin and his family went through will break your heart. Hey, I'm Christine. Before we get into this case, I want to say up front, this one might feel heavy if you are a parent. But I think it's an important story to tell, not just for the crime itself, but for what it teaches every family about the small choices they make. So, let's go back to the beginning. Wilmington, Illinois, population barely 5,000. Sits about 60 miles southwest of Chicago. It is one of those towns where everybody knows your last name, front doors stay unlocked, and kids ride their bikes until the streetlights flicker on. It was here that Kevin Fox and Melissa Rossi grew up. They met in high school. Kevin was a senior, tall, blonde, quiet. Melissa was a sophomore cheerleader, sharp, outgoing, and unafraid to make the first move. She was the one who asked him to homecoming. They were young when life accelerated. Melissa got pregnant at 18, Kevin was 20. The news shook them. They even broke up briefly. But Kevin dropped out of Illinois State University, took a job as a commercial painter, and did what he believed was right. That's when they moved in together and got married. Their first child, Tyler, was born in 1998. 3 years later, on March 31st, 2001, they welcomed a daughter, Riley Ann Fox. I want you to understand something before we go any further, because later in this story, people are going to question who Kevin Fox was as a father. They're going to weaponize his grief and use his love for his daughter as evidence against him. So I need you to see him first, the real him, before anyone tries to rewrite who he was. Riley was a force. Talkative, silly, sassy. She knew no stranger. Her favourite colour was pink. Her favourite show was Dora the Explorer. She loved colouring, playing dress-up, and getting dirty in equal measure. But more than anything, Riley was a daddy's girl. Kevin attached a little cart to the back of his bicycle so Riley could ride with him everywhere. If you saw Kevin around Wilmington, you saw Riley, either riding on his shoulders or a few steps behind him, trying to keep up on those little legs. You know, someone once said something that stuck with me. Parenting doesn't change you. It can help reveal who you really are as a person. That's exactly what happened to Kevin Fox. Fatherhood revealed him. Everyone who knew him said the same thing. Kevin wasn't performing the role of a good dad. He just was one. It was the most natural thing about him. In late May of 2004, Kevin's older brother Chad got married at Holy Name Cathedral in Chicago. Kevin was the best man, Tyler was the ring bearer. And Riley, she was the flower girl. She'd insisted on picking out her own dress. She tried on gown after gown, searching for the one with just the right amount of twirl. When the ceremony began, the plan was simple. Riley would walk down the aisle, scatter rose petals, then turn and sit with her mother. But in true Riley fashion, she skipped that part entirely. she walked right past the groom, up the marble steps, and straight to her daddy. The entire cathedral erupted in laughter. Kevin scooped her up, kissed her forehead, and carried her back to Melissa. And just 2 weeks later, Riley would be buried in that same princess dress. Saturday, June 5th, 2004. Melissa Fox left Wilmington for Chicago to participate in a breast cancer fundraising walk. It was her first night ever away from both of her children. She called Kevin multiple times that evening, nervous. He told her everything is fine. You go, we'll be great. Earlier that day, Kevin had taken Tyler and Riley to an art supply store where they got some poster boards and colours, and later on the kids had made posters together. Go, Mom! To hold up at the finish line in Chicago the next morning. This explicitly shows that the kids were very excited to go to Chicago the next morning. Riley and Tyler spent that entire afternoon with Kevin, and later on he dropped them off at their maternal grandmother's place. In the evening, Kevin went out for some work with Melissa's brother and picked up the sleeping kids late at night to take them home. When they got home, Kevin realised he'd washed the kids' bed sheets earlier that day but forgot to put them back on. So he laid Tyler on the love seat and placed Riley on the couch in the living room. She was wearing a white t-shirt with a pink flamingo on it and pink capri pants. He covered her with her favourite yellow blanket, then he kissed her goodnight. He went outside to smoke a cigarette, came back inside, locked the front door, and watched some TV in his bedroom. The back door lock had been broken for a while. But this was Wilmington. Nothing bad ever happened here. Around 2:33 a.m, Kevin turned on a white noise fan and fell asleep. I want to pause here because every parent listening to this knows this moment. You know the end of day exhale, the moment when the house finally goes quiet, the kids are asleep, and you can just stop for a minute. After a whole day of working and making sure everything is perfect, the nighttime is finally when any parent gets to relax and wind down. And, in that silence, you can finally breathe. Kevin Fox trusted that silence. A few hours later, shortly before 8 a.m, 6-year-old Tyler walked into his father's bedroom and shook his leg. Kevin assumed they were playing hide and seek. The kids did it all the time. He got up and started looking, under beds, behind furniture, and even in closets. He called out for Riley, but she did not answer. Then he noticed something. Both doors, front and back, were open. The front door that he knew he had locked, and the back door with the broken lock. Her yellow blanket was still on the couch. Kevin quickly called the neighbours, Riley's friends, but no one had seen her. Right here is where the first seed of suspicion was planted. Kevin didn't call 911. He called the non-emergency line. He'd been searching for nearly 40 minutes on his own first, still believing Riley had wandered to a neighbour's yard. In his mind, 911 was for fires and injuries. His daughter must be playing a game. Finally, after a few hours of searching, someone must have called the police. When the cops arrived, they told him not to panic. Kids wander off. But Riley had never done anything like this before. Meanwhile, in Chicago, Melissa was approaching the finish line of her breast cancer walk when she called Kevin to coordinate where they'd meet. The moment he answered, she knew that something was wrong. She rushed back to Wilmington as soon as she could. When she arrived, she found chaos. Dozens of officers, search dogs, and helicopters. Over 500 volunteers from surrounding towns had turned out to search for a little girl most of them had never even met. At approximately 3:30 that afternoon, 2 volunteer searchers, Christine Lopez and Lisa Romano, arrived at the Forsyth Woods County Forest Preserve, a public park, about 2.5 miles from the Fox home. As Christine walked the banks of a creek that ran through the preserve, she noticed what she initially thought was a bag of groceries floating in the shallow water. She thought that the bag looked suspicious, and what she saw was the most horrific thing she has ever seen in her entire life. 3-year-old Riley Fox was found lying face down in a shallow creek, still wearing her pink and white flamingo t-shirt she'd gone to bed in the night before. There was a bruise on her forehead and 9 additional injuries to her head. The minute Kevin and Melissa saw their little girl, they knew. No words passed between them, no one had to explain. The world they had built together, the one that had Riley at the very centre of it, simply stopped. What the medical examiner would later confirm made it somehow worse. She had been alive when she entered the water, which meant there had been a moment, however brief, where she might have been saved. The cause of death was drowning. This part of Riley's story is the hardest thing I've ever had to narrate. Because she was just a 3-year-old innocent child. She was somebody's baby, somebody's little sister and the princess to her father. And some part of me, the part that still believes in what parents are supposed to be able to do, wants to rewrite this. I want Kevin to wake up. I want him to hear something or just walk into that living room and realise that this was all just a bad dream. But that's not what happened. On June 11th, 2004, more than 6,000 people gathered at St. Rose Catholic Church in Wilmington for Riley Fox's wake. In a town of 5,000, that number told you everything how heartbreaking this case was, not just to her family, but to the whole community. Riley lay in an open casket, wearing the same princess dress she had chosen and worn as a flower girl just weeks earlier. Mourners wore pink ribbons and butterfly pins. But among the crowd, there were 2 men with video cameras. They weren't filming the funeral. They were filming Kevin Fox. 2 detectives from the Will County Sheriff's Department had been assigned to attend Riley's funeral. Not to pay respects to Riley, but to observe the behaviour of her father. From the very beginning, investigators had locked on to Kevin. Just because he was the last adult to see Riley alive. He waited 40 minutes before calling the police, and because there were no signs of forced entry in the house. That last point would later prove to be irrelevant. The back door lock was already broken, a fact Kevin and Melissa had told investigators from day one. But by then, the theory had already hardened into certainty. And here, right here, is where this story transforms. It stops being a murder investigation and becomes something else entirely. This is the story that tells you what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you decide, without evidence, that you are the monster. A few weeks after the funeral, detectives asked permission to interview 6-year-old Tyler, Riley's big brother. Kevin and Melissa agreed immediately. They had nothing to hide. They wanted to help find whoever did this. Tyler was brought to the Child Advocacy Centre, where a forensic interviewer, someone supposedly trained to speak with traumatised children, questioned him for over an hour.
Did you see Dad carry her out just for a little bit? It's okay if you did. Did you see Dad take her out for just a little bit? Was he carrying her? No. Did you know who took Riley out of the house? I don't know. Or who did she go with? I don't know. Sorry, I don't think there's any more.
What happened in that room is difficult to describe without anger. The interviewer began with basic questions. What sports Tyler liked, what he'd had for breakfast. But the questions quickly became relentlessly suggestive. Tyler said no 168 times. He crouched in his chair. He covered his face with his hands. He cried. He asked for his parents. Not a single person observing through the one-way mirror intervened on his behalf. Tyler Fox was 6. His baby sister had just been murdered, and instead of being held and protected, he was placed in a small room and asked over and over to implicate his own father in his sister's death. On the way home from the interview, Detective Michael Guilfoyle, without a recording device, without a child specialist present, without Kevin or Melissa's knowledge or consent, conducted a second, unofficial interview of the 6-year-old boy in the car. He later wrote a report claiming Tyler said his father had taken Riley somewhere that night and was washing his clothes when Tyler woke up. There is no video, no audio, no corroboration. Just a detective's word against a 6-year-old boy who had already said no 168 times. Every day, we are trying our best to raise awareness of such crimes happening against innocent children so that we can save every child and make every parent aware. And it will only be possible if you support this channel by sharing it with every parent you know, because together, we all can make a huge difference. For months, Kevin and Melissa cooperated fully with investigators. Kevin provided DNA samples. He had his brother and father provide DNA. They allowed searches of their home, their car, their clothing. They never hired a lawyer because they believed they had nothing to hide. Throughout the summer of 2004, the lead investigator, Scott Swearingen, maintained warm, friendly contact with the family. The Foxes also believed the police were working hard to find Riley's real killer. They had no idea that they were the ones being investigated. October 26, 2004, 5 months after Riley's murder, Kevin and Melissa received a phone call from the Will County Sheriff's Department. Come to the station. We have new information about the case. The parents believed this was the call they'd been waiting for, that police had finally found the person who killed their daughter. They arrived together, and immediately they were separated. Melissa was placed in a conference room. Kevin was placed in a small interrogation room. The cameras in that room were turned off. Kevin had been awake since 4:30 that morning for work. He'd eaten almost nothing all day. He was exhausted and emotional because he believed he was about to learn who murdered his daughter. 5 detectives entered the room: Edward Hayes, Michael Guilfoyle, Scott Swearingen, Brad Wacht, and John Rudiger. At first, the questions were routine, the same questions he'd answered a dozen times. "Walk us through that night again." Kevin complied. Then the tone changed. The detectives told Kevin they knew he killed Riley. They showed him photographs of his dead daughter's body, autopsy photographs, close-ups of her injuries. They told him his car had been captured on surveillance footage from a nearby gas station at 4 a.m. the morning Riley disappeared. The footage was so blurry it was impossible to identify the make or model of the vehicle, but they presented it as proof. They told him they had fibre evidence linking him to the crime scene. This was a lie. They screamed at him. They got in his face. They told him what would happen to him in prison, that inmates would do to him what had been done to Riley. According to Kevin, one detective went so far as to physically press himself against Kevin's knee while graphically describing the sexual violence he would face behind bars. Kevin asked for a lawyer. The request was ignored. Around midnight, roughly 8 hours into the interrogation, they brought in Detective Richard Williams to administer a polygraph test. Williams was relatively inexperienced, having conducted only about 90 tests in his career. He wasn't the department's first choice, but he was the only examiner available. The polygraph lasted about an hour. They told Kevin he failed. An expert witness would later testify at trial that the results were fabricated, that the charts showed no deception whatsoever. I want to stop and talk directly to every parent listening right now. Imagine you are Kevin Fox. Your 3-year-old daughter, who said, "I love you, Daddy," on home video, was taken from you. And now, 5 months later, you are sitting in a room with 5 men who are telling you that you did it for 14 hours. And they will not let you leave until you say what they want you to say. So Kevin did what he could have. At approximately 8 a.m. on October 27th, after 14 unbroken hours of interrogation, no food, no attorney, and no end in sight, Kevin Fox confessed. It was the only portion of the 14-hour interrogation that was recorded. Kevin Fox was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The state's attorney, Jeff Tomczak, who was 6 days away from a tight re-election race, announced that his office would seek the death penalty. Bond was set at $25 million. A father who was still grieving the murder of his daughter was coerced into confessing to her death, facing execution, while the real killer, whose name was written on the evidence, went home freely. After Kevin's arrest, the world turned against the Fox family overnight. The news exploded locally, nationally, internationally.
Kevin Fox was accused of killing his 3-year-old daughter Riley in Will County.
The public had already decided who was the killer. Neighbours who had searched for Riley now crossed the street when they saw Melissa. Tyler, 6 years old, who had just lost his baby sister, stopped being invited to birthday parties. Even parents wouldn't let their children play with him. And that slowly started to kill Melissa's hope. But slowly and surely, she started to get back up again, and she fought back. She went home and made phone calls to lawyers, to journalists, to anyone who would listen. And Kevin's brother Chad, he fought too. He reached out to an attorney he'd heard about, a woman who took on cases the system had already buried. Her name was Kathleen Zellner. Kathleen Zellner took one look at the case and saw it for what it was, a coerced confession propping up a theory that the physical evidence contradicted at every turn. She assembled a team of private investigators and forensic experts and went to Wilmington. What they found began dismantling the state's case almost immediately. First, the bathroom door. Kevin's confession claimed he'd accidentally slammed a bathroom door into Riley's head, killing her. But Zellner's team examined the door. It was a lightweight, hollow-core interior door, the kind found in every standard American home. Multiple experts determined it was physically incapable of producing the catastrophic head injuries documented in Riley's autopsy. Second, the creek. Kevin had told police he placed Riley in the water at a specific spot along the creek. But Zellner's team tested the current and determined it was far too weak at that location to have carried Riley's body to where it was actually found, over 100 yards downstream. Third, the timeline. The confession described a sequence of events that simply could not have occurred in the time available. The drive to the creek, the assault, the drowning, the return home. None of it fit the window between when Kevin said he fell asleep and when Tyler woke him. The confession didn't match the physical evidence. Then, Zellner found something that changed everything. Buried in the Will County Sheriff's case files was a critical piece of evidence, a rape kit performed during Riley's autopsy. DNA had been recovered from her body, which had never been tested. DNA recovered from the body of a 3-year-old girl who had been sexually assaulted and murdered had been in the possession of investigators for 5 months. They never sent it to a lab. When the DNA was initially sent to the Illinois State Police Crime Lab, the results came back inconclusive. The technology available at that lab wasn't sensitive enough. Standard practice in such cases was to forward the sample to a lab with more advanced equipment. Instead, Detective Ed Hayes called the State Crime Lab and told them to stop testing the DNA altogether. Kathleen Zellner obtained the sample through the courts and sent it to a private laboratory with more sophisticated testing capabilities. When the results came back, they were unambiguous. The DNA found on Riley Fox's body was, with 100% certainty, not Kevin Fox's. On June 17, 2005, after 243 days behind bars, all charges against Kevin Fox were dropped. He walked out of jail a free man. Kevin Fox was free, but Riley's killer was still out there, and because investigators had spent 5 solid months and all of their resources building a case against the wrong man, the trail had gone cold. Now I need you to go back to the beginning. Back to the shoes. Back to the creek. Back to the very first hours of this investigation. Because those shoes were only one of at least 5 critical pieces of evidence that investigators either ignored, dismissed, or failed to connect. Each one of these, on its own, was a signpost pointing directly at Riley's killer. Together, they were a roadmap. Number 1. The burglary. On the same morning Riley was reported missing. The exact same morning. A neighbour directly across the street from the Fox home reported that their house had been broken into during the night. Someone had cut through a screen door and stolen $40 from a wallet. Investigators never connected this burglary to Riley's disappearance. Number 2. The red car. Multiple witnesses independently reported seeing a suspicious red Chevy Beretta driving slowly through the Fox's neighborhood on the night Riley disappeared. One witness said it drove by multiple times. Police noted these reports and never followed up. Number 3. The shoes. 2 mud-covered white sneakers were found in the creek near Riley's body. They were Department of Corrections issued shoes. They had the name EB written on the tongues in black marker. The shoe size didn't match Kevin Fox. Investigators collected them, logged them into evidence, and set them aside. They never ran the name. Number 4. The bathroom. The men's restroom at Forsyth Woods Forest Preserve, steps from where Riley's body was recovered, was never formally searched. Officers actually used the restroom to relieve themselves during the investigation, contaminating the crime scene. Riley's missing pants and underwear, which had been discarded in a trash can just outside that bathroom, were never found by investigators. Civilians discovered them later. Number 5. The welfare check. And this is the one that will stay with you. In the hours immediately following Riley's disappearance, while hundreds of people were searching every field and ditch within miles, Wilmington police received an unrelated call.
911, what's your emergency?
I need a welfare check on my friend, Scott. He just told me he's going to kill himself.
A friend of a local man named Scott Eby had reported that Eby was threatening to kill himself. Officers went to Eby's home to conduct a welfare check. When he answered the door, Scott Eby was barefoot and covered in mud. He vomited when he saw the officers. Then he asked them a question.
Did you find the little girl yet?
The officers assessed him, determined he was no longer an imminent threat to himself, and left. They did not connect the suicidal, barefoot, mud-covered man who was asking about the missing girl to the missing girl. 5 pieces of evidence, 5 arrows, all pointing at the same man, all collected or observed within the first 24 hours. And instead they spent 5 months destroying a grieving father's life.
Watch where you're going!
For 6 years after Kevin walked free, Riley Fox's murder remained officially unsolved. The jury awarded the Fox family $15.5 million, later reduced on appeal to $8.5 million. They found that 5 investigators had violated Kevin Fox's due process and intentionally inflicted emotional distress. Meanwhile, the FBI had taken over the investigation into Riley's murder. Special Agent Lori Warren was assigned to the case in 2009. 5 full years after Riley's death. Warren's team started from zero, as if the murder had just occurred. They canvassed the neighborhood again, re-interviewed witnesses, and systematically chased down every lead that Will County investigators had abandoned. During one of these interviews, FBI agents spoke with a woman who knew something that could solve this case. She told them about her ex-boyfriend, a man she'd had a bad feeling about ever since Riley's death. She told them about a moment at Riley's memorial garden months after the murder when she'd said to him,
"I can't believe somebody did that to that sweet little girl."
and he replied,
"Oh, that was such a shame, wasn't it?"
She told the investigators that she cannot explain it exactly. It just sounded like someone who was disturbingly familiar with the tragedy. Her boyfriend's name was Scott Eby. Scott Eby was a 38-year-old guy who had an extensive criminal record. Forgery as a teenager, multiple burglaries for years, and even assault. And at the time they found him, he was already serving 14 years imprisoned for sexually assaulting a young female relative. At the time of Riley's murder in June 2004, Eby had been out on parole. He was living with his mother in Wilmington, approximately 1 mile from the Fox family's home. He owned a red Chevy Beretta, and he wore Department of Corrections issued sneakers with his name written on the tongues. FBI agents Warren and Jeremy Resar travelled to Lawrence Correctional Center to interview Eby face to face. He was cooperative, polite, and said he didn't know the Foxes, that he'd only heard about the case on the news. Agent Warren initially didn't feel he was involved. Nothing in his demeanour raised alarms, but she wanted a DNA sample, just in case. They swabbed him and left. And then Scott Eby fell apart. After the agents departed, Eby placed a phone call from the prison line to his mother. That call, like all inmate calls, was recorded, and the recording was later obtained by ABC News. Days later, Agent Warren received an urgent call from the prison. Scott Eby had attempted suicide, and he had written a letter. The title of the letter was A Confession to Murder. It was faxed immediately to the FBI field office. Warren and Resar returned to the prison. This time, a video camera recorded the conversation from start to finish. And this time, Scott Eby told them everything. On the night of June 5th, 2004, Scott Eby was drunk, high on cocaine and driving his mother's red Chevy Beretta. The same red car that witnesses had reported seeing in the Fox neighbourhood. He was looking for houses to burglarise. He broke into the house across the street from the Foxes first, cutting through a screen door and stealing $40 from a wallet. The same burglary which was reported the next morning. When he came back outside, he looked across the street and saw the Fox home. A swing set in the yard. He walked to their back door. The lock was already broken. He walked right in. He said he looked around for things to steal, but didn't find anything of value. He claimed he was about to leave, but then he looked at the living room, and he saw Riley, asleep on the couch. He picked up Riley, covered her mouth, carried her through the front door, and placed her in the trunk of the car. He then drove to Forsyth Woods, to the same park where her body would later be found. Before that little girl finally stopped breathing, Riley spoke her last words.
"I want my daddy."
Scott Eby's DNA was tested against the biological evidence recovered from Riley's body. It was a perfect match that left no room for doubt. On the day Scott Eby was formally charged with Riley's murder, Will County State's Attorney James Glasgow stood before the cameras and finally put the right name to the crime. He announced multiple counts of first-degree murder and predatory criminal sexual assault of a child, and he made it clear the state would be seeking the maximum punishment the law allowed: life in prison. In November 2010, Scott Eby pleaded guilty to 5 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of predatory criminal sexual assault. In exchange, he avoided the death penalty. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, meaning he would never again walk free, never again look for an unlocked back door or a sleeping child. Inside the courtroom, Riley's family sat just a few feet away from the man who had destroyed their lives. Kevin had already cleared his name by then, but there is no exoneration from what happened to Riley. There is no verdict that gives you your child back. There are moments in this work, in telling stories like these, where I realize that the person speaking has transcended their own grief, that they've reached a place where anger has been refined into something harder and more permanent than rage. It becomes clarity. Melissa Fox didn't scream. She didn't collapse. She stood up straight, looked the man who murdered her baby girl in the face and told him,
"You don't get to take the memory of her from me."
That is what a parent sounds like when they have nothing left to lose and everything left to protect. Scott Eby was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. After the hearing, when Melissa was asked to say a few words in Riley's memory, she said she prefers to focus not on the day Riley was taken from her, but on the day Riley was given to her, and she's forever grateful to God for giving her such a beautiful and loving daughter. In 2010, then Will County Sheriff Paul Kalpers publicly acknowledged that his department, quote, obviously dropped the ball. He commissioned an independent review of the entire investigation. The report was brutal. It said, in careful, official language, that investigators had ignored obvious leads and clung to a theory that never made sense. The report's author, Bill Andrews, put it plainly. I think the primary reason they believed Kevin Fox was responsible, ultimately, was that he was all they had. So 5 months into the case, they decided to make a run at him, but not because there was overwhelming or even remotely convincing evidence that he had done anything wrong. Despite the $15.5 million civil judgment, despite the fabricated polygraph, despite the 14-hour unrecorded interrogation,
they have the capacity to videotape the entire interrogation, but they don't.
Despite all of it, no officer was ever criminally charged. No officer was formally disciplined. 4 of the 5 detectives involved in Kevin Fox's interrogation remained employed in law enforcement. Think about what that communicates. Not just to the Fox family, but to every parent listening to this right now. It says we can take your child. We can fail to investigate their murder. We can accuse you of doing it and completely destroy your reputation and still face no consequences. That is the system we are living in today's world. After Kevin's exoneration and Scott Eby's conviction, the Fox family tried to rebuild, but Wilmington no longer felt like home. The community that had rallied to search for Riley now looked at Kevin with lingering suspicion. People still whispered about him and sent him threats. The town that was supposed to be their safe place became something they needed to escape. The family moved away. Kevin and Melissa had another daughter, Tegan, but the accumulated weight of everything, Riley's murder, the arrest, the false confession, the trial, the years of public suspicion, it had hollowed out something between the couple that love alone couldn't repair. They eventually divorced and both remarried. Kevin moved to Arkansas and opened a commercial painting business he called Fox Painting. Melissa stayed closer to Illinois. She continued to visit Riley's grave. She went to the memorial garden that was dedicated to her daughter. She brought flowers. On March 20th, 2023, 11 days before what would have been Riley's 22nd birthday, Kevin Fox was killed in a head-on car collision in Bentonville, Arkansas. He was 44 years old. I've sat with this story for a long time now, and the thing that won't leave me, the thing I keep coming back to, isn't the investigative failure. It isn't the coercion or the corruption or the 5 pieces of evidence that were right there, staring everyone in the face. It's the love. It's the image of a man attaching a little cart to his bicycle so his 3-year-old could ride everywhere with him. It's the sound of a mother at a sentencing hearing telling a monster,
You cannot take the time I shared with her.
Riley Ann Fox was born on March 31st, 2001. She lived for 3 years, 2 months, and 6 days. She loved fishing with her dad. She loved Dora the Explorer. She loved the colour pink. She loved a dress with just the right amount of twirl. And in her final moments on this earth, alone and terrified in the dark, she called out for the one person she trusted most in the world.
I want my daddy.
He couldn't hear her that night, but he spent the rest of his life fighting for her. And now, perhaps, they're together again. And she finally made it to him the way she always did. Past everyone else, up the steps, and straight to her daddy. We hope this video did justice to Riley and to her loving parents. We cannot imagine the pain Kevin and Melissa have endured. Our most sincere condolences go out to them. If this story moved you, and I think it did, there is another family whose story deserves to be heard just as much. Click right here. I'm Christine. Thank you for watching.